Hey friends, welcome to a new day. This is Zen, and thank you for joining me once again on my journey coming back from fear. Today is episode 10. Holy moly, can you believe it? We still have several more common fears to look at, but we have made some ground on our path already. Today's fear is going to be the fear of not being able to forgive someone else, or the fear of not being forgiven ourselves. A priest was called away for an emergency, and not wanting to leave the confessional unattended, he called his rabbi friend from across the street and asked him to cover for him. The rabbi told him he wouldn't know what to say, but the priest told him to come on over, and he'd stay with him for a little bit and show him what to do. So the rabbi came over, and he and the priest sat in the confessional. A few minutes later, a woman came in and said, "Father, forgive me, for I have sinned." The priest asked, "What did you do?" The woman replied, "I committed adultery." And the priest asked, "How many times?" And the woman replied, 3. The priest responded, "Say 2 Hail Marys, put $5 in the box, and go and sin no more." A few minutes later, a man entered the confessional. He also said, "Father, forgive me, for I have sinned." "What did you do?" And the man replied, "I committed adultery." "Well, how many times?" 3 times. And the priest replied, "Say 2 Hail Marys, put $5 in the box, and go and sin no more." The rabbi told the priest that he thought he'd got it, so the priest went on his way. A few minutes later, another woman entered and said to the rabbi, who was hidden inside the confessional, "Father, forgive me, for I have sinned." The rabbi asked, "What did you do?" This woman replied, "I committed adultery." The rabbi knew how to reply to that one and asked, "How many times?" And the woman replied, "Once." To which the rabbi said, "Go and do it 2 more times. We have a special this week, 3 for $5. Now, that joke is not meant to offend any religion or to promote adultery. It is just meant to be a little humor as we discuss the fears of lack of forgiveness. After all, when we are not in a place of unconditional love, don't we all have penalties that we make everyone else pay, for their sins against us? Whether it be rejecting them with the silent treatment, yelling at them, getting back at them somehow, playing the victim to make them feel bad. Oh, the list goes on, doesn't it? We are really good at punishing others, and we are especially good at punishing ourselves. When we look at the long list of conditional love laws that we all have for ourselves and for the world, it could be that our greatest fears are grounded in the belief that we will not be forgiven for breaking either our or other people's requirements of acceptability and lovability. Because if we knew that we would be forgiven no matter what, then maybe we wouldn't worry about it or fear it so much. Although I'm sure we would still be able to find some fear in it somewhere. We are really good at that. Or should I say that the fear ego that we have hired to guide us through our experiences in this life is really good at that. And good thing, because we really want to get the bang for our buck here, One huge fear that relates to the last episode that we had, where we chatted about the fear of death, is the fear of not being forgiven by our Creator. The basis of this fear hangs on the crux whether we believe that our God has conditional love for us or unconditional love for us. If we believe that our God has any condition, just one single condition, to love and accept us, then that love is conditional, because that is all that it takes to be conditional. One condition. And if we believe that, how many conditions do we think there are? And who told us about them? Did our God tell us directly, face to face, person to person? Or was it given to someone else centuries ago, years ago, days ago? Why do we trust what others tell us God wants for us? How do we know that it is true? How do we know that the human fear ego has not become involved in all of it? Can we really know the answer to these questions when we are in our fear ego ourselves? We might fear thinking independently because we don't want to, stick out or take the chance at making someone unhappy and, being rejected by them. But when we calm ourselves, coming out of our fight and flight, the voice of the fear ego becomes quiet, or at least quieter. And we are then able to hear the whispers of spirit. These are the words from the essence of the Creator, the words of unconditional love. When we are quiet inside, focused on unconditional love, then we can hear the language of unconditional love. And then I feel it is then we can ask our questions and we can hear the truth within our soul. When we are sitting in love, which sounds more right? No conditions, unconditional love, bliss, peace, or the fear of making a mistake that can end us up in an eternal hell. At the core of our fears of not being forgivable or being able to forgive others is also the belief that we are not enough, that we are imperfect. We find that when we are living in this world, we keep trying to be something else, something more, striving to meet some sort of criteria, to meet expectations of lovability, of acceptability. This is all part of our experience. It's why we came here. Back home on the other side, we are perfect. There are no conditions over there. So we meet 100% of those expectations because there are no expectations. Over there, we celebrate who we are. Just being is what we do over there. And everyone is amazed at each creation that each of us is. But to understand who we are and understand ourselves more deeply, we wanted to come here to a place where we could kind of experience what it might feel like to be less. We can't be less, so we can only pretend what it might feel like here. Take that in. We can never, ever be imperfect, so we pretend here in order to contrast imperfection against perfection. We come here to experience what it might feel like to be unlovable, because we can never, ever, ever lose unconditional love, because there are no conditions for it. So where do good and bad come from? According to some religions, sin was born in something like the Garden of Eden. And as the story goes, we were, living in a paradise, and God said, whatever you do, don't eat of that tree over there, or you will become aware of what good and evil are. If you think about it for a moment, if we didn't eat of that tree of judgment, would we still just be living, doing the same things, just not knowing what good and evil is? Maybe we would just be living, just being. Maybe we tried that before and got bored with it after a while. Maybe that knowledge of good and evil is a brain, fear, ego thing. Maybe it was a choice we made to experience with the confusion of having a billion different opinions of what good and evil would feel like. That feeling of not being able to please any of the people all of the time and not being able to please everyone any of the time. Just so many contradicting different opinions all around the world. No one can ever meet any of that. With my own experiences that I've had throughout my life, I find it hard to believe that we have a God who is a being of fear. Growing up, I had learned, about a condemning God who had rules, and there was a hell to punish those who did not listen to him. And that never really sat well with my loving soul. I wouldn't be able to do that to my own children if I had them. I couldn't even do that to my nieces and nephews or other people's children. And that is thinking, for my fear ego. So how much more able is the mother and father of all things to unconditionally love us? Now that feels right. That resonates with my soul. But while we are in fear, we will believe what others are saying about life because we don't want to be thrown outside of the village and ostracized. As I mentioned in the previous episode, once we face the fear of being rejected by all, we learn to no longer fear what others will think. Because we know that in the end, it doesn't matter what other people think. And to let that awareness ring true within us, we can know that the Creator of all things loves us unconditionally. And that's the opinion that matters the most, right? So all that helps us with the fear of not being forgiven. But what about forgiving others? You might have heard others mention that forgiving others helps us because the other person probably isn't letting it bother them, or they aren't even remembering it anyway. So we are only hurting ourselves with the stress and the bitterness and resentment that is boiling within us. And if it helps, we can look at forgiveness and forgiving others more as letting the wrath go. You don't have to forget what someone has done to you, and you won't forget. That's how our brains work. Even if we try to forget, we can't. But we can release the penalty for their horrible act. And that is how we can get our power back instead of giving it away to someone who doesn't even realize that we are all cattywampus about the situation. It's a start. It's empowering, even if the other person isn't aware that you just spared their lives. Once we are able to calm down enough to open our minds and look at the situation in life, we might be able to become aware that everything that happens in our lives is because we have asked for it. What? Yep. Before coming to this earth, we had a walkthrough of what would happen in our lives. Like you see them do in the movies where all the character actors gather to chat about what their part will be, how the scene will go, and all that. The universe loves us and wants every moment to be for our highest experience. Every single person on this planet is a being of unconditional love. We are just great actors and actresses. Everyone that interacts with us really, really, really loves us and is participating in our movie because they do love us. Think about that. That can change your whole perception of people's intentions, right? Because we think we know people's intentions, don't we? But how often are we wrong about people's intentions when we're able to look back on our lives? We think everything is personal, and then we find out nothing of how someone was acting really had much, if anything, to do with us at all. They were living their lives and their movie, and it intersected with ours, triggering the emotions we wanted to experience. And our emotions don't happen out there. They happen in here. It is my laboratory, so I have chosen what experiment will happen. And when I want people to remind me, reflect to me, introduce information to me, and all that fits in to trigger the emotions I have wanted to experience when I wanted to experience them. We all return back to that great hall back home one day to watch each amazing adventure, each mad experiment. And there's going to be plenty of footage for trillions of years. Talk about a movie night. That's going to be a blast. I'm sure there'll be a ton of laughter. So, is there really anything to forgive? Is there really anything to be forgiven for? One of the biggest realizations in my life, and one of my most freeing moments, was when I realized there was nothing to be forgiven. I had nothing to forgive others for. All the thoughts in my head of how people should have treated me and how they should have talked to me and worshiped me, those were all stories in my head created by my fear ego. It was looking for validation outside of itself from external people, situations, and things. What a comedy. A tool that helped me so much with this is what is called a Hate Your Neighbor worksheet, which is a part of an amazing ladies process called The Work. Her name is Byron Katie. That's Byron Katie. And you can witness it all for free on YouTube if you search for her name there, or on her website, which is thework.com. Just THEWORK.com. Check it out. I just know you will love it. It was life-changing for me. Next episode, we will focus on the fear of not having enough. It's kind of funny that it's working out where I'll be posting that around Christmas, which is right around the time when we feel we didn't get enough, or we can be wondering, where are we going to put all this stuff if we've gone a little bit gift exchange crazy? So until then, remember, you are a perfect, powerful, supernatural being made of unconditional love. Every moment here is about unconditional love or the fear of losing conditional love. Remember who you are.